Hello, Sitaram. Good morning, and welcome to another program in the series Addiction and Recovery. I am your host, Ramnaresh Dwarika, uh, bringing you this program every Thursday. And I want to welcome all our brothers and sisters in Trinidad and Tobago, up the Caribbean, and worldwide. All of those who are listening on the various social platforms, and to remind you that this program is being recorded and it will be posted on Facebook and YouTube at the end of the program. And all you have to do is type in my name, Ramnaresh Dwarika, Addiction and Recovery, and all the programs that I have been doing over the past years are posted there. And this is being done as a resource material that you can refer to other people, send a link to someone who you believe can benefit from it. And of course, you can place your comments there and I would respond to them. The program will also be repeated on radio and TV Jagriti at 10 p.m. tonight. So those of you who are busy at this point in time, going to work or at work or doing your chores, you can always come back and listen to the program tonight, or you can go to it on Facebook and YouTube. This morning, I want to speak about a very, very important aspect of recovery. And I think in my own experience, this is one of the reasons so many other well-intentioned programs have been failing. And the topic this morning I want to look at is the role of faith and spirituality in healing and recovery. And this is not intended only for people who are alcoholics and drug addicts, but it is really directed at the general public as well as people in recovery and families, faith leaders, and community supporters. It is important. A lot of us, yes, have become addicted to certain substances, but there are a lot of us there who are addicted to behaviors and not only illicit substances. Some of us are diabetics and can't seem to be able to stay away from sugar and sweet things that are, dangerous for our health. We are addicted to so many other things. We are addicted to situations as well. We might be addicted to behaviors, certain positions, status as well, money, power. A lot of people are addicted in so many other ways to substances and behaviors that they know is not is not good for them, is dangerous, yet they can't seem able to stop it. So when I speak about addiction, yes, in this program, we target alcohol and marijuana and cocaine and those illicit substances and the ones that are very obvious. But I also want you all to reflect for a minute on all those other addictions that we might be addicted to, like wanting to always be in control, wanting to be noticed, you know, because of low self-esteem and all of those. And so that as we look at this topic this morning, I want to just imagine someone who's at their lowest point, struggling with addiction, with pain, or with despair. And while medical treatment may help, but many, for many, there's something deeper is needed. And that something is faith, hope, and a sense of connection with the spiritual. In Trinidad and worldwide, where I have traveled and I've worked, I have met the majority of people believe in some higher power. Even atheists may not believe in God, but they believe that there is some divine order to things. There is some things are not helter-skelter, even in nature when you look around. You look at how animals adapt, how flowers adapt, how the whole universe is running, and there must be some intelligence behind all of this because the universe is not chaotic, you know. So at the start of the program, I want to define what might be considered to be faith and what is spirituality. So let us start by defining our terms. Faith. Faith often refers to belief in God or a higher power, expressed through religion usually. But we may have faith in other things, not only in God, we may have faith in relationships. We may have faith in our certain systems and so on. So it extends to all of that. And then spirituality, however, is much broader. It can mean a sense of purpose, inner peace, or connection to something greater than ourselves, even outside formal religion. So I have met with a lot of people, and indeed I myself subscribe to a life based on spirituality because religion have become so fundamental in some instances that it excludes other people based on geography and ethnicity and practices and culture and so on. But spirituality has the ability to embrace all cultures, all religions. Both faith and spirituality are deeply personal, however, and they meet people wherever they are. And this is what I've seen, especially in fellowships like Alcoholics Anonymous, where you have people of different ethnicity, different religious persuasions, different orientations, even atheists and agnostics. They all can find common purpose in spirituality. Now, addiction is not only physical, it touches the mind, the heart, and the spirit. And I remember, Professor Bobran at most of the Caribbean Institute on Alcoholism and Drug Addiction seminars that I was part of for many years, would start his lectures on the first day by describing the whole question of addiction and how it affects every component of the human existence. We human beings, he would describe as we are biopsychosocial spiritual beings. Bio means that we have bones, muscles, and organs. Psycho means that we have self esteem, we have feelings, we have emotions, and we have, and we, and we also are social beings in that we belong to groups, family, workplace, unions, organizations, and so on. We belong to groups. But for the most part, we always believe in something outside of ourselves. God, as we may understand him, but God for every human being, indeed, my own experiences, is a personal relationship. Even the same God by the same name would be envisaged in different ways by each and every individual. So it's a very personal thing. Now, addiction creates emptiness, but faith offers meaning. With addiction, my experience working in the field, most of the time you'd see people eventually becoming isolated or isolating themselves. Even in a family, in a group, they don't sense and feel that sense of belonging because of the stigma associated with their behavior and the consequences. Eventually they become isolated in their own group, even in families. So that addiction isolates, but spirituality restores connection, not only within one's own ethnicity or religion or community, but cuts across many other borders. Addiction creates despair, but faith brings hope. And the important thing for people, a lot of people, they have tried every strategy. And most of you would know that I am also a person in recovery. And I've been there, done that. I could relate to the whole question of isolation. And I would have tried every single method known or suggested, changing the blend, changing the chaser, changing the geographical changes, moving from one group of friends to other friends, all kinds of things. And when all would have failed, it reaches to a point where you lose hope. but spirituality restores hope. Research shows that those who nurture their spiritual lives often have greater resilience. Even in isolation, they seem to be able to draw from an inner strength. And the net result is that among people who, and I've done research in Jamaica, in Trinidad as well, and those people who left treatment and rehab facilities and so on, and went back to their communities, joined with their temples, their churches, their mosques, found other support groups, especially Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous. Once they started to follow spiritual principles as is suggested in the various 12-step programs, what we found, and this is well documented, that the relapse rates were very, very much lower than those who tried to do it on their own, especially those who had found a stronger support network out there of friends and so on. So that if you consider Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12-step programs, of course, now that same 12-step programs is used by not only Alcoholics Anonymous, but Narcotics Anonymous, Overeaters Anonymous, Gamblers Anonymous, Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous, by various other fellowships. And in those fellowships, they emphasize a surrender to a higher power. Especially in AA, you'd see the second step of Alcoholics Anonymous suggests that we came to believe in a power greater than ourselves that could restore us to sanity. And a lot of people I know at first would, when I discuss that step with new people in my practice here who are attempting to stop drinking or using drugs for the first time, they say, but I'm not crazy. That step suggests that I'm insane, so it has to restore me to sanity. But the truth is, the difference between and I've worked in St. Anne's Hospital, Ward 1, in the mental hospitals of all the mental hospital situations in Trinidad. I can tell you, I can tell the difference between sanity and insanity. Of course, insanity is very obvious. So that if you are doing the same thing, the same way, and expecting a different result, that is insanity. You drank, you got into trouble yesterday, you vomited this morning, you were sick, you are running the risk of losing your job, you got into quarrels, you mash up the TV and all of that. You realize it is because of the drinking. And yet, by evening, you are going back and drinking again. Now, if that is not insanity, what is? And I've heard a lot of professionals describe, the mental illness as permanent, more permanent, but alcoholism, drunkenness is a kind of temporary insanity, because in drunkenness there's a stage where you go into blackouts, where you are not aware. Well, you are aware at the time what you're doing, but you can't recall. And that is not a defense in law, because we have had instances where people committed fatal crimes and then they couldn't remember how and why it happened. But that did not excuse them from being made to pay the penalty. So steps like prayer and meditation and moral inventory draw on spiritual principles in the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. And coming back to step 2, so that if a person has tried everything, as indeed I did, try everything endogenous to myself, all the strategies, and they all fail to keep me from drinking and staying sober, then anyone who would have asked me to again appeal to those strategies endogenous to me, inside of me, known to me, I would know that, look, I've already done that. I know it don't work. And this is why step 2 of the AA program is relevant, because now AA is asking a person to turn to something outside themselves, whether it be a God of your understanding, doesn't matter whether it's a Hindu God, a Muslim God, a Christian God, or even if you're an atheist, to turn to something outside of you, which could be your support group or your counselor or your mentor or someone who is trying to help you. You need to have to, and that makes sense. So, of course, prayer and meditation offers a person a tool that they can use any time of day. And a lot of times, addiction is rooted in coping skills, the mind. And meditation is one of the most powerful strategies that I'm aware of in terms of making one aware of their minds, what the mind is doing. Sorry. And when you become aware of the mind through meditation, then you are better able at thought substitution of managing your impulses and all of that, and postponing gratification. You are much more able to practice your relapse prevention strategies through by taking a moral inventory as well. You become aware of your strengths and weaknesses. And that is what step 4 and 5 of the AA program is. You know, even in counseling and developing interventional methods as a professional, all counselors are, as part of their strategy, is to assess their clients' strengths and weaknesses, to know what behaviors put them at risk for addiction and what are their strong points that they can build on. So many find strength in acknowledging they cannot recover alone. And there's a popular saying in recovery: you alone can do it, but you can't do it alone. You alone have to do it. Actually, nobody can't do it for you. You alone have to do it for yourself, but you can't do it alone. So that even non-religious members often interpret the higher power as a community or nature or an inner wisdom. Throughout history, countless recovery stories highlight faith. And I can speak from my own experience, that at first I didn't even think God would help me because, there were so many, because of my drinking and drug use, so many bad things that happened that I thought by then God was not going to listen to me. In fact, in a kind of way, I thought I deserved the punishment because of my misbehavior under the influence and all of that, and the way my life escalated. So that faith in a higher power starts with, well, trying at first and this is why support groups are important, you know. And I can say I have been doing these programs since 1993 on various media houses. It is over 30 years now. And I always pray and ask for an inspiration before I do the program. Yes, I do some amount of research and preparation, but I firmly believe that it is God who guides me through this process. Sometimes when I look at when I review the program, I wonder, did I really say that? Did I really write that? It sounds so much higher than what I myself think I'm capable of. And I know, I firmly believe that God used me as an instrument of His will to communicate these messages to you, my brothers and sisters who are listening. So that in so many places, there are instances where a woman who prayed each morning, finding strength to resist cravings one day at a time. And that's one of the strategies that I suggest to people who I counsel with addiction. One of the first things you do is start your day with a prayer. Indeed, I start my day with a prayer of gratitude every morning. While as I'm still lying on bed, as I become consciously aware that I'm alive and I'm again facing another day, even with my eyes closed and without saying a word in my mind, I would begin to thank God. And my prayer would sound something like this: Thank you, God, for the opportunity of seeing another day. As I say that, it registers in my mind this morning how many of my brothers, our brothers and sisters in the world, in Gaza, in other places, who did not wake up this morning because of the cruelty of other individuals. Thank you, God, for a bed to get up from. How many people do not have a bed this morning? And I feel for them. And I also record the gratitude that I feel for having a bed to get up from. Thank you, God, for a roof over my head. Thank you, God, for the air that I breathe. Thank you for hands and feet that working, for eyes that can see, for ears that can hear. And every single thing that I comes to my mind that I could be grateful for, I thank God. And I tell you, from a logical perspective, even if there wasn't a God, I can tell you from a psychological point of view, it is a good place to start our day, all of us. Because, you know, our minds work like this. If I gave every one of you listening 10 compliments, and then I gave you one criticism, the next time you see Mr. Dwarka, what would you remember? You would remember that one criticism. He said so and so to me. You would forget the 10 compliments I gave you. And that is how our minds work. Now, I want to take that analogy to the prayer in the morning, that prayer of gratitude. There's a tendency most of the time for us to get hooked on the one thing that is not working for us, the one stressor that we have in our life. And we forget all the other things that are going on for us and that we could be grateful for. So, this is important for our own mental health to take our mind to that place where we record that, we do have things that we could be grateful for. And I like to think like this, God has provided for all of us every single thing that we need in this world, everything that we need. Not necessarily all that we want, but those things that we need. And as a Hindu, or we get up, we do a little prayers and we do our tea and so on. We offer flowers, we offer water, we offer, you know, we take a little diya and we do arti for our deities. But I want to remind myself and my brothers and sisters listening this morning that where did I get the flowers from to offer? Where did I get the leaves? Where did I get the water? God offered it to me before. I got it from Him. And I'm offering it back to Him. And He doesn't take a diya and do my arti. He takes a whole planet, the sun, whether I recognized him, whether I'm atheist, agnostic, he does this for me. If I even just did the biggest crime and came, he still does not fail to show me by example what I should be doing. So I'm just repeating what God does. To me, that's a humbling thought to know that God does this for us every day. So that, you know, imagine God gave us everything that we need, and all we are doing with it is trying to make weapons to eliminate each other. And if we hit another person with a nuclear bomb, they are programmed. All these countries that have nuclear weapons have already programmed their equipment to respond. One of these days, by mistake, I fear, is that some one of these things will trigger off, as indeed all equipment they can be faulty and start a Armageddon they call it, and that will be the end of all of us. But can you imagine, as a parent, I have children, and my own feeling is that the worst thing that can happen with any parent is when their children cannot get along with each other. And I could imagine how God is when he looks at what's happening in this world, how unhappy we are making God. when we can't get along with each other, when we are secretly plotting to hurt and end and danger and damage each other. But suppose you were God and you had one child that you are, you know, that lives somewhere in the world who gets up every morning and says, God, thank you for the opportunity of seeing another day. Thank you for a bed to get up from. Thank you for a roof over my head. Won't you be pleased with that child? Wouldn't you listen to that child? And that is what we all should be doing. You know, I attended a yagya that is going on at Diwali Nagar, and I heard the topic is Lok Sangraha, which means for the betterment of the world. And every single thing we were being reminded by both the mentors there, the gurus, the teachers, the pundits, is that all our actions must always be for the betterment of the world. Every single action. And even last night, you know, we were reminded that it must start with me. If I have peace and love in my heart, then it would influence my actions, my charitra, as they say. And when my actions are informed by good intention, then my deeds will also follow being good deeds. When that happens, then my relationship with the people in my family will get better. When the people in the family are practicing these principles, they will influence the community. If everybody in the community is doing this, then they will influence the nation. And by extension, the nations will influence the world. And we could have Lok Samgraha, welfare of the whole world. I thought I'd just mention that because it resonates with me. So that every one of us listening to this program has a choice. Who we are, where we are, how we are is based on the choices that we are making. So today the next action we perform, the next thought we entertain will influence the choices we make. And we can decide whether it's going to be for the good of all or whether it's going to be selfish and only be for my own ill intent. So, coming back, communities where spiritual rituals like singing, meditation, prayer become anchors for sobriety. And this is why people in recovery are reminded when they leave rehabilitation centers, they should find their temples, find AA groups, and so on. These stories remind us that recovery is not just about stopping a harmful behavior, it's about finding a new life. And this is what I have seen. This is what is amazing for those people who eventually stop drinking, stop using drugs, and start going to Alcoholics Anonymous and their temples and so on, start practicing these principles that they are being reminded by their mentors and their gurus and their Molvis and priests and pastors and pundits. You are encouraged again to go back. And you can start that just like you started your recovery one day at a time. Everyone listening to this program can decide after this moment, look, there's a little voice inside of us that says, this is right and this is wrong. We all know that. We don't have to go to school to know it. You know, there's a little voice that tells us, look, if you steal somebody's food, they'll go hungry. And when you were hungry, you know how it feels to be deprived. So you shouldn't steal somebody. When you get wounded, you feel the pain. So you shouldn't wound somebody else. We didn't have to go to school or even to temple to learn that. There's a little voice called conscience that has always been telling us so that we can listen to that little voice today. Don't turn down the volume and we can decide deliberately, look, I am not going to do anything wrong just for today. Just like I decided I will not take that drink just for today. I'm not going to do anything wrong. And if I get a chance to do anything right, and it doesn't have to do a big thing, It can just be giving a pet some food, watering a plant, pulling a weed, or saying something pleasant to someone, complimenting someone, smiling and encouraging another person. Any little opportunity you get to do something good, don't lose it today. Today could be the last day of your life. So you don't, you if you have any amends outstanding, anyone you have hurt or harmed, don't put it off. Call them and say, look, I'm sorry. Clean your slate. Because if today, I have a relative who got a serious heart attack just yesterday, day before, and he's a young man. Nobody ever expected that this could happen with him. And this can happen with any one of us. This could be the last day. So that if this is your last day, take this as your plan of action, you know? And, you know, and this is not isolated to any particular religion. Spirituality in recovery is not one size fits all. Everyone, it is a very personal thing. People find healing in many ways, and in AA and in different circles I've seen, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, Judaism, and other faith traditions, they all offer guidance on compassion and self-discipline and renewal. I don't know any religion that is familiar, and I have studied comparative religion that tells you should be dishonest, that you should hurt another human being, that you should be selfish. None. Yeah, we may have little differences of opinion on whether you should eat meat or not eat meat or whatever, or you should wear a certain kind of clothes and certain social conduct. Yeah, we may have in different cultures, but essentially, and the truth is, most of the religions recommend things like meditation. Nowadays people are calling it mindfulness. That is cultivating inner peace and awareness. That is what it is. And it is simple, you know. And maybe in one of the other programs, I will look at teaching. I taught meditation for many years. I practiced meditation as well. And in fact, let me just say this: the single most important investment I make every day is that moments of meditation, that 10 minutes or 15 minutes of meditation every day. And then, of course, in recovery, I have found in my own case, when I stopped drinking, I had a lot of time available to myself. I went back to school. And that's why I'm doing this program now. I also found a lot of times to learn music, art. There is also writing and spiritual practices. I've gone back to, those that were recommended, the rituals and so on that were recommended, for my particular religious persuasion. And this deeper connection with oneself, I read a book called The Natural Mind that was written by a person who was the chairman of the American Psychiatric Association. I don't recall his name right now. Andrew Weil. Andrew Weil. That is Weil. And the title of the book is it's in fact The Natural Mind. That's the title of the book. And in the book, he made a very profound statement that he has seen a lot of people give up addiction to take up meditation and take up meditation, but he was yet to see someone giving up meditation to take up drug addiction. As a practitioner of meditation myself, I can tell you the peace and happiness that I have derived from practicing meditation. I will not trade a teen for a drink anymore, or a smoke, or any drug. And I think that is one of the main barriers to relapse when a person has reached to the point of starting to practice meditation. Some key benefits of spirituality is that it provides hope and purpose, the belief that life has meaning. And also by joining support groups, you have now friends, because when a person stops using drugs, there's a tendency to become very lonely. But going back to church now, you start meeting a lot of other people, and you will find some of them who do not have a problem with alcohol or drugs. You go back to your mosque, to your temples, and spiritual groups often provide strong networks so that even on those days when you feel lonely and isolated, or you're getting an urge, you can call someone and say, I'm feeling very depressed or anxious. These are all withdrawal symptoms, psychological withdrawal symptoms that can happen. And these organizations and these becoming involved, they tend to help rebuild values and direction for the person. And of course, you enjoy a certain level of peace and resilience from prayer and meditation. And the ritual reduce stress and support long-term recovery. So that, as I said, people who do these practices have something to occupy, something that is nurturing to occupy their time now, rather than staying by themselves. There's the old saying, the idle brain is the devil workshop. So that now, of course, there are challenges to a spiritual life, a life of faith. Faith and spirituality in recovery also faces challenges, that not everyone is religious, and pushing faith too strongly can alienate some people. And I have had the unfortunate experience not too long ago. I had this young person, beautiful young lady, who came accompanied by her mother, and she openly confessed, being addicted to alcohol and sometimes using other substances. And she would go out there and, drink with friends, and then she can't remember what happens. And yes, it led to other forms of abuse from other people. Young men would get a girl drunk and then take advantage of her sexually and otherwise. However, this particular individual had a very, very strong rejection to this whole question of faith and a higher power and God. And don't want to give too many details, you know, but sometimes people, when they reach to this point, they actually become angry, because how God could allow all of these things to happen to me. You know, if there was a God, how can and even now a lot of people are questioning, if there's a God, how come all this is happening in the world, in Gaza, in all of these places? How could God allow these things to happen? And there's serious questions that come up. However, a lot of people have attested to the fact that they believe in something outside themselves, the group, their organization, their support system, and they have been able to stay sober. So some have been hurt by religious institutions, because although people go to church, and even in the church, there's discrimination I have experienced, where people look down on the alcoholic. If you come in there, they put him to sit at the back, and they look. You all listening would have had that kind of experience, where the holier than thou attitude even in the churches. And this is why sometimes churches are not able to help people, and a lot of people stay away, because they feel the sting of the stigma. you know Others may struggle with guilt and shame, or feeling unworthy of spiritual help, and I have experienced that myself. The key is to keep faith, and spirituality as open doors, never as closed ones. You don't force people, but you let them decide eventually for themselves. And I've seen a lot of people who started off as atheists eventually realize, hey, you know, Suppose when I go up there, I realize then that there is a God. Then what? As I mentioned before, even if there isn't a God, doing the right things and living the right way has its own benefits because of cause and effect. If you do the right things are going to happen with you. If you do wrong things, there are consequences attached to behavior. And the alcoholic and the drug addict is a good example. So, how can faith and spirituality support recovery in everyday life? Daily prayer or meditation, reading sacred or inspirational texts, attending spiritual meetings of services, practicing gratitude, as I mentioned at the outset of this program, writing down blessings each day. All of these becomes barriers to addiction. Serving others, volunteering, helping those in need. And even if you ever went to AA, you would hear people talking about even the founder, Bill W., after he was 6 months sober, he was out there pounding the pavements and trying to sober up everybody else, and nobody else had stayed sober. Nobody he had spoken to about his experiences and so on had stayed sober. And he was complaining to his doctor, Dr. Silkworth, that I have not been able to help anyone. And then Dr. Silkworth pointed out to him, but you have stayed sober. So there is a saying in Alcoholics Anonymous that whenever anything fails to keep the alcoholic sober, intensive work with other alcoholics never fail. So you find alcoholics in recovery when they spend a lot of time trying to help their friends and acquaintances and people around them to stay sober. By doing that, they ensure their own sobriety. And a lot of people are unable to understand that at first. That what is his agenda? Why is he trying so much to help me? But he's trying so much to help you because it helps him to stay sober. So that I want to say, the time runs out very quickly on this program. If you or someone you know is in recovery, they need to explore spiritual resources in their community. Go back to your church. Go back to you know, your guru, your pastor, your priest. Those keep company with the elders in your community. You can learn so much from them, especially those people who are in recovery, the elders who are in recovery in your AA groups or your NA groups and so on. Explore spiritual resources in your community. Reach out to faith leaders who understand addiction. And I know a lot of priests, although they may not be addicted themselves, but they have been working in the community and they understand the nature of addictions. I know a lot of people who go to Mount St. Benedict, for instance, when they have to do their step 4 and step 5 in particular, which requires that you admit to God, to yourself, and to another human being the exact nature of your wrongs. The cathartic ventilation that they benefit from by speaking to another. And a lot of people use their pundits, their priests, their Maulvis for this purpose, because these people, they're not generally judgmental. They have good airs and they can keep things in confidence. So that remember that spirituality doesn't have to look one way. It doesn't have to be, in AA and NA, you'd see people who are Christians, Muslims, Hindus, of every kind of ethnicity and religious persuasion. They're all claiming that it is but for the grace of God that they are sober today. And they are all grateful for that. So that, friends, addiction wounds the body, the mind, and the spirit. But recovery can restore all three. So that as I started off, I want to again reiterate that as human beings, we are biopsychosocial, spiritual beings. And any recovery program that does not attend to all 4 areas is doomed to failure before it even starts. So that, yes, medicine has been preoccupied with dealing with the biological, the bones, muscles, and organs. So they'll give you the Valium and the vitamins and so on to help you with the withdrawal And most people just use that to prepare themselves for the next bout of drinking. As soon as they feel good, it helps them to get out of the withdrawal, and they soon enough go back and drink. And then, yes, we have people who, psychotherapists, who will do counseling and attempt to help you with your coping strategies and all of that. Counseling has been found to be much more far reaching in terms of recovery, and it is a very useful adjunct to a treatment. But in itself, without the spiritual component, it the chances of success is still precarious. So that all programs that will have the best chance of succeeding is a program that attends to the biological. Yes, so that a person, if you envisage a person who is actively using, especially a person over 45 who who has symptoms of DTs and blackouts and all of that, who has had years of drinking alcohol and so on, they need to be detoxed under medical supervision. They need to sometimes be assisted with medicines, to help them with the withdrawal. But that must be something that is, there must be a plan to escape that, to stop using the medication, not becoming dependent on the medication. And that is one of the reasons acupuncture is to my mind, a better preference to deal with the withdrawal symptoms. Then counseling is important, but also going back and reconnecting with your church and your support systems, your family support systems, and so on. So that faith and spirituality remind us that no one is beyond hope, no one is beyond healing. And as I say that, for alcoholism and drug addiction, it seems most people wait or have to wait until they hit bottom. That is, they hit some crisis of some sort before they become willing to accept help. So that, unfortunately, a lot of people wait too long, until they can either end up in prison or dead or in the insane asylum. What this program is intended is to not wait till you reach to hit rock bottom, but to bring up rock bottom to hit you where you are right now. So for those of you who have never drank, there are so many other things that you can drink, right? Without putting yourself at risk. Because yes, the truth is not everybody who drink will become alcoholics. But everybody who became alcoholics started out just like you with that first drink, just to socialize, just to enjoy yourself. And then eventually it led to addiction. So that, you know, as we close, I want to say that, recovery is not just about breaking free from addiction. It's about finding freedom, peace, and purpose, sometimes through faith, always through connection. So I want to thank you all again for joining me. May you and those you love find strength on the journey of recovery. And of course, if you have a problem or you know someone who has a problem, you can always refer these programs, the link to them, or you can ask them to listen to it, or they can call. The numbers are on your screen, 671-3040 or 7685925, and you can contact me. And I would be only too willing to assist. I also suggest organizations and temple groups and so on. If you would like me to come and do a lecture for your group, exchange and share thoughts with them, I'm always willing to assist in that area as well. So I want to thank you all for listening. I want to thank Radio and TV Jagriti for giving this time free of charge as a community service to all our brothers and sisters worldwide. And I can tell you a lot of people are listening to this program because wherever I go, people recognize me now that we're doing this on television. And they encourage me, they give me words of encouragement. And I cherish those things because it is what helps me to continue to do the research, continue to come every week and to present these programs to you all. My intention is not to drive the world, but of course to educate you so that you make better choices, that you or your life can go in a direction that would help you to achieve the purpose for which you came in this world. So again, gratitude should be your attitude. Gratitude should be your attitude. I want to thank you again. Thank Radio TV Jagriti and all those people who facilitate this program, Jason and the people, Mr. Bhimal and all of them. Thank you all, Mr. Maraj in particular, Vijay Maraj, who is the CEO of the Jagriti, who keep, you know, working at helping our brothers and sisters, writing in the newspapers, beautiful articles. I want to thank you all again, and until next week, Thursday, see you again. Have a good weekend. Thank you.